Chapter 102 Shizun's Shizun. Shizun, pay attention to me. They were the words Moran had spoken when they'd first met beneath the heaven-piercing tower. At the time, Chuaning's eyes had been closed. When Moran called to him, his lashes fluttered open. These were also the words Moran said when they parted for the last time at the Red Lotus Pavilion. At that time, Chuaning's eyes had also been closed. Moran called to him, but he never again raised his head. That one sentence drifted for half a lifetime, from the heaven-piercing tower to the edge of the lotus pond, and finally settled into dust. All those years of hate and love scattered and went cold. Moran had finished his last jar of pear blossom wine and descended from the southern tip of Shisheng Peak toward the eve of his final day. The next morning, the rebel army that charged into Wushan Palace discovered that Taxianjun, that calamity upon the world for the past 10 years, had taken his own life at the age of 32. 2 lifetimes had passed. Moran opened his eyes. He had slept the night through under the flowering tree before the heaven-piercing tower, and he woke up dazed and lost, unable to tell when he was. "Shizun?" he murmured absently. "Pay attention to me." Only then did he remember that, in this lifetime as well, Chuaning was gone. In his past life, Moran had become accustomed to his everyday being a bitter struggle. Then, Chuaning had been the one who had walked with him to the very end. He didn't want to be that vile person again in this life, but now Chuaning wouldn't be around to see what became of him. Perhaps the heavens themselves couldn't bear it, or perhaps it was simply fate. Chuaning had grown disgusted beyond endurance with him in the past life, so in this one, he was the first to take his leave. Moran laid his arm across his eyes, holding back the tightness in his throat. He heard Zhuo Chengyong shouting frantically in the distance. His uncle was looking for him, calling, "Runner, where are you? Runner!" Shimei was calling for him as well. "Aran, where are you? Hurry and come out!" "Runner, come back and keep Yuheng company." "Don't do anything stupid, Runner." Keep Yuheng company. Keep him company. Moran dragged himself off the ground and staggered toward the voices. He couldn't collapse. He couldn't collapse. There was so much he still had to do. They still hadn't found the person behind all this. Not to mention the heavenly rift could open again at any time. Shisheng Peak had suffered heavy losses in the catastrophe, and there were innumerable matters that needed to be seen. Shuomeng was heartbroken from grief, so anguished he couldn't even rise. Moran couldn't collapse too. So, Moran endured it and forced himself to pick up the pieces. He told himself, "It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt." This wasn't the first time he'd lived through Chuaning's death. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. But how could it not hurt? Over 3,000 steps Chuaning had crawled, carrying him on his back. How could it not hurt? He'd drained his very last reserves of spiritual energy. He'd given it all to Moran. How could it not hurt? He had suffered an identical injury, but so as to not burden his disciple. He had adopted a heartless expression and left on his own. How could it not hurt? And in the past life, Chuaning had also suffered the same injury as Shimei. It was just that he hadn't said anything about it. He hadn't said, and Moran hadn't asked. He roared angrily at Chuaning, vented endless hatred on him, flung to the ground those wontons Chuaning, who had yet to recover from his own injuries, had worked so hard to make for him. Before his eyes, Chuaning had bent down, lowered his head, and then, one by one, had picked up each wonton and thrown them away. How could it not hurt? How could it not have hurt? He had dug out Chuaning's heart, How could it not have heard? How could it? Moran couldn't take a step further. He stood in place for a long spell, trying to suppress these feelings, trying to rescue his calm. His entire body trembled. It hurt. He buried his face in his hands, bit down on his lip, and swallowed his sobs with the blood. A very long time passed before he managed, just barely, to pull himself together. He lifted his head, his eyes red around the rims, and drew in a deep breath. Then, slowly, he walked down the steps. He couldn't collapse. "Uncle! Runner, where were you? You had me worried half to death. How am I gonna face you hang in the afterlife if something happens to you?" "It was my fault," Moran said. "I'm okay now. Sorry to have made Uncle worry." Chua Cheng-yong shook his head. He wasn't quite sure what to say, so he only patted Moran's shoulder. After a long moment, he said, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. You're already so much stronger than Menger." He sighed. "Where's Shomong?" Moran asked hoarsely. "Sick. He has a high fever. He just drank his medicine and went to sleep. He's inconsolable when awake, crying all day. Sleep will do him some good." Chua Cheng-yong looked exhausted. "The heavenly rift of the infinite hells has the whole cultivation world in a state. Even the upper cultivation world is sending people to look into the matter now. But whoever behind it covered his tracks incredibly well. Butterfly Town was practically leveled in the bloody battle, and no clues were left to be found." Moran wasn't at all surprised to hear this. This individual's abilities were clearly beyond what anyone, including himself, had anticipated. Someone who could take Chuaning's life obviously wouldn't be so careless as to leave traces. What does the upper cultivation realm plan to do? "Representatives from each sect are holding a meeting at Spiritual Mountain to discuss the matter," Chua Cheng-yong replied. "I'd planned to set off for it tomorrow, but I'm worried about leaving when Menger is like this." He was right. Even the world's preeminent songshir, Chuaning, had lost his life in the incident at Butterfly Town. Negligent as the upper cultivation world might be, they could no longer afford to simply sit by and watch. Who'd laid down the spells that opened the barrier? What is he after? What's his next move? These questions circled in their hearts like vultures. Everyone wanted answers, but an extensive investigation had yielded none. They had no choice but to cooperate with one another. "Don't worry, Uncle," Moran said. "I'll help Aunt take care of things in the sect while you're gone." That's good. Chua Cheng-yong sighed. "I wish I didn't have to burden you with this." With Chua Cheng-yong's departure and Shu Meng lost in his fugue, all the accumulated scrolls of paperwork and attendant tasks fell to Moran. He threw himself wholeheartedly into the work without daring to rest for a moment. If he stopped to rest, stopped to think, the anguish and regret would drag him into the abyss and torture his broken soul. He wished he could bury his head in scrolls, day in and day out, if only so he could ignore the endless torment and guilt that racked his heart. When the infinite hells had opened, yin energy had flooded the mortal realm, and all manner of fiends, long suppressed, had seized the opportunity to escape and wreak havoc across the land. The letters of commission requesting aid from Xisheng Peak had practically piled up into a small mountain. Moran busied himself taking care of it all, forgetting to sleep and skipping meals. He often stepped into Loyalty Hall at the break of dawn and stayed late into the night before returning to his quarters to rest. But even buried in this ocean of paperwork, he would find himself pricked unawares by splinters of Chuaning left behind. Xinjiang region has been troubled as of late, and most of the 82 families in Fengling village are old and ailing, with no means to defend themselves. We are fortunate to have a holy night guardian automaton made by your esteemed sect's elder to fend off the fiends for now. But this is not a long-term solution, so we would like to request. A drop of wax slid slowly down the candle, and the wick crackled. Moran came to with a start. He had been staring vacantly at the letter for some time, his finger tracing the words, Holy Night Guardian, over and over. In his mind's eye, he saw Chu running in a Red Lotus pavilion, his hair pulled back in a ponytail, and a sanding file held in his mouth as he poured his focus into oiling an automaton. Moran let out a long breath. He pressed his fingers to his forehead and rubbed lightly. Suddenly, he heard someone knocking. Shimei? The beautiful young man dressed in light, simple white robes entered, balancing a tray. He set it down beside Moran's scrolls, then rolled up his sleeves and stirred the candlelight back to brightness. Aran, he said gently, you've been working all day. Have something to eat. All right. Moran forced a smile and laid down his scroll, continuing to knead at the throbbing pain between his brows. I made a bowl of ginseng chicken soup and a few side dishes. Shimei set out the plates and felt the temperature through the side of the bowl. Oh, good. It's still warm. As they ate, Shimei noticed a loose wisp of hair hanging before that handsome, weary face, and reached out to tuck it back in. Aran? That day, was there something you wanted to tell me? Moran's thoughts were scattered, and it took him a moment to understand what Shimei was asking. He glanced at Shimei. Which day? Shimei pursed his lips and lowered his gaze. He was silent for a time, then answered. The day of the heavenly rift? Moran waited for him to continue. You said you were going to go help Shizun mend the heavenly rift, and that there was something that you still felt like telling me when you came back then. Shimei bowed his head, and his voice trailed off. In the glow of the candle, his delicate, snow-white ears seemed a little pink. Moran stared for a long time, but couldn't manage a single word. He knew, without a doubt, that he loved Shimei dearly, but right now, in this moment, he really wasn't in the mood, not in the least. Moran was shameless and unmannerly. He couldn't care less what others said, and things like morality and etiquette were thoroughly foreign to him. But that didn't mean he was heartless. A long second passed in silence. When Moran finally spoke, his voice was soft. Sorry, I feel really down right now, and I don't think this is the right time. So, about that thing, I'll tell you some other time, okay? Shimei's head snapped up, his beautiful eyes startled. Moran squeezed out a chuckle and raised his hand. He hesitated a second, then patted Shimei's head. I'm kind of dumb, and there have been so many things to take care of lately. I don't know when I'll have a quiet moment to gather my thoughts. I don't want to be careless about it. Even the warmth of the candle couldn't conceal the gradual blanching of Shimei's face. Careless? He paused, then smiled. Aran, it was life or death back then. I would have thought anything you were going to say at a time like that was something you'd already given careful thought to. I have. Moran furrowed his brow. I've thought about it for a long time, and it's never changed, but... Shimei leaned forward. Moran hesitated. Eventually, he said, but not right now. His hands clenched into fists in his sleeves. Not right now, Shimei. You don't know yet, but it's something very important. I don't want to rush it and tell you at such a miserable time. Young master! A junior suddenly barged in unannounced. When he saw that the one managing sect matters in Loyalty Hall was Moran, he hurriedly dipped his head in a bow and corrected himself. Mogongse. At this interruption, the faint blush on Shimei's cheeks faded. He flicked his sleeves and sat back in his chair, taking on a mild, unassuming appearance. Moran looked up, oblivious to the shift in Shimei's demeanor.
What is it? Reporting in. There's an esteemed guest at the sect entrance.
An esteemed guest? Moran echoed. Anyone of note from the 10 great sects is at Spiritual Mountain right now. Where'd this esteemed guest come from? The disciple seemed both fearful and excited. His face flushed and he stammered incoherently for a few seconds before he finally managed to blurt.
It's Master Huizui of Wubei Temple.
What? Even the ex-emperor Taxianjun couldn't help but jump to his feet. Shimei was startled as well. Master Huizui? Moran had good reason to be shocked. Master Huizui was practically a legend in the cultivation world. This man had long ago achieved enlightenment. By all rights, he ought to have ascended. But when the great gates of the heavenly realm had opened for him, he had pressed his palms together and said that he could not break with the mortal realm, could not let go of his lifelong obsession, and could not wash himself of past sins. In the end, the heavenly light dimmed, the lotus blossom wilted, and Master Huizui had ambled away from immortality in his threadbare monk robes, his staff tapping lightly against the ground. After declining his chance to ascend and become an immortal, he had gone into seclusion at Wubei Temple to reflect. A century passed in the blink of an eye. 100 years since, the cultivation world had heard his name, but never laid eyes on his person. The number of seniors still living who had met him before his seclusion could be counted on one hand. In his past life, Moran had turned the land upside down and still hadn't been able to meet this Master Huizui. Huizui had been too ancient, and had passed away on a rainy spring day the year before Moran climbed to the top of the human world. No one knew how old he'd been when he passed. Yet, how unexpected, in this reborn life, Master Huizui had come calling in the dead of night of his own accord. Innumerable thoughts flashed through Moran's mind in the space of an instant. Though he didn't yet know his business here, Moran immediately recalled certain rumors about Master Huizui. Huizui. How could he have forgotten about Master Huizui? When Shimei died in the last lifetime, Moran had been ignorant. He'd no idea there was such a sage in the cultivation world. It was only later, when he was emperor, that he learned from his subordinates of the existence of one in this world who could wield rebirth, one of the 3 forbidden techniques. That person was Huizui. He had dispatched people to Wubei Temple at all speed to request the sage's presence, that he might recall Shimei's soul. But the people he sent returned with the news that the great master had already passed away, and with him Moran's last chance to revive Shimei. But right now, this person of legend was still alive. He was still alive. How did he forget that? How could he forget? Moran's heart lurched, and he trembled all over. A blaze lit his eyes as he said hastily, "Hurry, invite the great master in." Before the disciple could respond, Moran changed his mind. "Actually, I'll go welcome him myself." But he'd taken only 2 steps when there was a sudden flash of yellow from without the hall. Neither the candle nor its flame shuddered. There was no hint of a breeze. No one, not even Moran, with his keen eyes, had seen him enter. Yet, a monk arrayed in a bamboo hat and a threadbare monk's robes now stood commandingly inside Loyalty Hall. He had moved like lightning and stopped right in front of Moran, who started at the sudden proximity. "This one is already imposing so late at night, and shall not trouble Mo Shichu so." A deep, mellow voice
drifted out from beneath the bamboo head, startling both Moran and Chimay. How was this the voice of 100-year-old man? Moran had barely finished a thought when the monk removed his bamboo head. In the candlelit hall, he looked no more than 30 years of age, with a pleasant appearance and a mild demeanor. His eyes were bright and sharp, but rather than projecting menace, they were calm and lucid, like the reflection of light and water. "You are—" The monk pressed his palms together and bowed low. "Amitabha. This humble monk is Huizui." No one had expected Master Huizui, who was 100 years old at least, to look younger than Chua Chengyong. For a beat, there was only stunned silence. But Moran knew a thing or two when it came to cultivation. Huizui was someone who had rejected ascension and chosen instead to remain in the mortal realm. The only difference between this man and an immortal was that final step of shedding his mortal body and undergoing the heavenly trial. After following this line of reasoning to its conclusion, Moran relaxed a little, though he still couldn't look away from Huizui. Huizui didn't wish to disturb anyone else, so they sat down in Loyalty Hall, just the three of them. Moran poured the tea for the great master with his own hand. Huizui accepted and murmured his thanks, but did not drink. He set the tea aside on the small sandalwood table and slowly raised his head. He spoke in polite and mellow tones, but cut straight to the point. "Moshichu, pray forgive this humble monk for being so forward, but the reason for my visit today is a past acquaintance." Moran's heart began to race. His vision swam, and his fingers dug into the table's edge with such force he nearly cracked it. He stared intently at Master Huizui's face as words from his past life whirled through his mind like drifting flakes of snow. There's a rumor that someone has successfully used rebirth, one of the 3 forbidden techniques. But it's a rumor only. There's no knowing whether there's any truth to it. Where's this Master Huizui? I'll pay any price to bring Shimei back. To answer your majesty, Huizui has already passed away many years ago. He wrote nothing in all his life, and regarding rebirth, he said only that to change fate is in defiance of heaven's will, its dangers immeasurable. Other than that, he left nothing else. The words streamed past his ears. Master Huizui had an unfathomable grasp of mortality and reincarnation. Word has it that he had dealings with the ghost realm. If he yet lived, perhaps Mingjing Shishong might be returned from the grave, but unfortunately, Master Huizui was like a ghost lingering in the world of the living. He undoubtedly had a hand in anything and everything to do with the yin and the yang. Moran drew in a deep breath and was surprised to find that his voice trembled faintly. "Past acquaintance. A past acquaintance," he murmured, his own eyes locked with Master Huizui's clear ones. Moran's back was covered in a sheen of sweat. He asked in a voice so soft it was nearly inaudible, "Who is this past acquaintance?" The monk rose slowly. In the low candlelight, no shadow pooled beneath his feet. The sleeves of his plain, thin, yellow robe hung low. The robe was obviously worn, but was completely smooth and free of wrinkles as it drifted lightly in the breeze like the flickering outline of a ghost. This great master was certainly inscrutable. Moran could practically hear the pounding of his own heart in his ears. He unconsciously stood with Master Huizui, and the two of them gazed at each other. "Great Master." If there had been a mirror before him right now, he would have seen the light of hope that had dawned unbidden on his face, and the pleading look that followed in its wake. "Who is this past acquaintance?" Was it him? Was it him? Huizui lowered his lashes and sighed as he pressed his palms together again. My disciple, Chuaning, perished 7 days ago. Tonight is the night his soul is due to return. This humble monk cannot bear to send off one so young, and comes to Sishan Peak to beg Mochichu's pity. Please return this old monk, his disciple.